Dr. Katy Soar. I'm a senior lecturer in Greek archaeology at the University of Winchester. So obviously from that you can tell my background is in Greek archaeology, but I've always very much loved folklore and folktales like that, and been a big fan of supernatural stories. So some of the things I'm interested in my research is the role of archaeology in sort of supernatural stories and natural tales. And so this kind of stems from that.
My name is Dr. Amara Thornton, and I am a research fellow at the University of London on a project called Beyond Notability, Women in Archaeology, History and Heritage. And I'm interested in archaeology and the supernatural, partly because I'm a historian of archaeology, so I research archaeologists who are working in sort of Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East, and there are lots of stories that are associated with those places. And also I'm interested in popular publishing in archaeology, and a lot of the stories that we'll be talking about today are coming out in popular venues. There are some top stories that everyone knows about, like Arthur Conan Doyle's Lot 249, but I wanted to get a sense of what else was out there. I did a hashtag on Twitter called Excavation Gothic, and I got a number of different responses, and then we just started talking about it because I knew you were interested in
I think I'd sort of
Katy, so.
had a bit of a list myself of things, and I had this idea playing around in my head about maybe putting a collection together, but I hadn't really done anything about it. And then I saw you was interested in a similar type of thing, so I messaged you, or you messaged me, and it was kind of like, hi, why don't we kind of think about doing this together? In fact, I first met Amara, I think, at the Monstrous Antiquities conference back in 2013 maybe, which was about kind of archaeology and horror and the supernatural, and I gave a paper there on Arthur Machen. So it was kind of Arthur Machen that got me interested in this stuff anyway, because of my background in Greek archaeology, and he wrote about Pan, so I started to kind of look into that, and then it kind of went from there, and that's, like I said, how I met Amara. So I've always been a fan of Machen, so I was very pleased we could get him in here.
I mean, I really wanted Marjorie Lawrence, and she's someone that I came across quite by chance. I had a volume, the Virago Book of Ghost Stories, which is just ghost stories written by women, and it was published in the 80s, I think. And Marjorie Lawrence's story, The Haunted Saucepan, is in there, and that's what introduced me to her. And there's a very, very small reference to Egyptology in The Haunted Saucepan. It's a very small, or a sentence or two in the story. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if she wrote any more stories that have to do with, Egyptology. So I started researching her, and she actually incorporates archaeology into a number of different bits of her writing. So it was really exciting for me to be able to include her in the list.
Quite a few of these I wasn't aware of beforehand, like the Dorothy Quick story from Weird Tales. I hadn't really heard of her before. So some of these we came across through looking through kind of back issues or archives of magazines like Weird Tales. So some of them were kind of new to me in that sense. There's some big names in here, if you will, but there's also some ones that I personally hadn't heard of before. So just surprising, and I'm sure Amara can add to it, how many stories we did find that did have, in things like Weird Tales, this kind of connection between the supernatural and the archaeology. I hope people will realize there's quite a lot more out there, from both men and women, from not just the UK, but from other countries as well, writing stories set in other places and other times too. So hopefully they'll be kind of inspired to go and find some more, maybe, do some more reading into this.
Yeah, and I think it was quite surprising to me how many stories we found that had classical references in them.
Yeah.
Because often with archaeology and the supernatural, you get stories that are set in ancient Egypt. I mean, that is the place where you find a lot of people have written a lot of anthologies about. Shows how sort of strong that interest in Egypt is. But I think what we wanted people to take away from this volume in part is the fact that there are other civilizations that and other geographies where this kind of archaeology and the supernatural concept overlap. And so we wanted to be able to showcase that.
We wanted to try and select a good mix of times and places and authors, and so not just give the kind of stories or authors that people might expect to find in these volumes, like Mummy Stories or M.R. James. So sort of mix it up a bit and showcase other places and times as well.
I think also one of the things that I hope people take away from this is the fact that archaeologists were also producing these narratives. So, and they might not know that M.R. James was also an archaeologist and E.F. Benson was an archaeologist, but I think it's important to understand that archaeologists are interested in producing the narratives about their own discipline.